Everything that I had done at Cambridge and in rowing, none of it was easy, especially that last year before I intermitted was my first year of clinical placements. So I was having to drive to Ely in the mornings, do a session, drive to King's Lynn, which was where my hospital placement was, which was an hour and a bit away, do a full day of placement, somehow figure out how to do a second session, and then go to bed and do it all again the next day. And there were times where I did not know how I was going to quite complete it, but I knew that I had to because I wanted to. And so it wasn't really a matter of whether I should, it was I'm going to, so how am I going to do it?
Hey, what is up? Welcome to Last Stroke Counts. Today's guest is a double world and European champion and the boat race winner for Cambridge. It's with great pleasure that we can welcome Imogen Grant to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. But yeah, like I said, really highly requested guest from a lot of people. So it's really fun to get to speak to people, especially like someone that our other guests are interested to listen to. So I think that's going to be really fun. Obviously, like your record speaks for itself, big time. And we got some stuff to discuss with regards to lightweight rowing. But yeah, thanks for coming down. It's you and Henley now, and we're back in Leander again. We started using quite a lot. We say it already, like this is like the best backdrop for a rowing podcast.
Oh yeah, it's a perfect location. And I mean, the only thing that goes on in Henley is rowing, right? So
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, just an occasional festival in the summer.
Yes.
Yeah, with some hippies. But other than that, it's pretty much rowing.
Yeah, cool. So I think like how we normally get into it is just to find out how you got into rowing. It's quite interesting. No one's got the same story.
Yeah. So I didn't know anything about rowing until university. Never did it as a kid, never did it as a junior, despite the fact that I grew up in Cambridge. My sights were very much set on studying medicine at Cambridge. I wanted to be a doctor, and I decided that when I was about 7 years old, and pretty much just stood by that and stuck to that for, all through secondary school, all through doing my A-levels. So by the time I arrived at university, I was the least fit that I think I'd ever been in my whole life. I'd done a lot of sport when I was a lot younger. But by the time I kind of hit 16, 17, I didn't think that I could be sporty and study. I was like, I'm not a sporty person. I just do sport sometimes. And then they sort of fell by the wayside as I was revising for A-levels and doing personal statements and kind of gearing up to study medicine at Cambridge, because that's what I really wanted to do. And then I arrived at Cambridge and was like, okay, I'm going to knuckle down. I want to get first. I want to do really, really well. And suddenly realized that I was quite a small fish in quite a big pond when it came to the academic side. And suddenly I wasn't getting that reinforcement, that positive reinforcement from doing well. And it just so happened that at my college, Trinity College, during Freshers Week, there's always an event that the boat club puts on called Boaty Cocktails. And so all the freshers go, and if you sign up for a taster session, you get 2 free drinks. So Julie went with all of my friends that I just met, the last couple of days, barely knew any of them, but put my name down on the sheet, took my 2 free drinks tokens, and had absolutely no intention of going to the taster session at all. But I'd signed up with a friend, and we were going to go together, and it was a few days away because other people had signed up and got their free drinks. And when the day rolled around, she was actually going to uni basketball tryouts. She was a really great basketballer. So she was like, oh, actually, I can't come to the taster session. Are you going to go? And I was like, oh, well, I might as well not bother. But then I felt bad. I'd had those 2 free drinks, so they were quite nice. And I put my name down for the taster session, and I knew that they'd be expecting me. So at the last minute, I sort of chased them down. They'd already left to walk to the boathouse at that point, and I managed to catch them just at the end of the road. Got to the boathouse, got on a boat, and I vividly remember in that first session, there was one of the seniors that was in the boat with me, and it was just a small comment, and I'm sure he was just being encouraging, but he turned around and was like, I think you're picking this up pretty quickly. Like, I think you might be quite good at this. And I was like, Hell yes. I love a compliment, and I signed up for my second taster session basically as soon as we got off the water, and things went from 0 to 100 pretty damn quickly.
As is rowing.
Yeah.
You must think back now then to think back at that and be like, imagine if they'd just got a little bit further down the road and you just
no. Genuinely, yeah. It was such a split second decision, and I really nearly didn't go at all.
What year was that?
In my first year.
And
back in 2014.
Oh, okay. So not that long ago, comparatively to like.
Yeah. So I've been rowing for just over 9 years now.
Wow.
So I imagine you just gone straight into the bumps campaign. What you've got at Cambridge is Lent and Maze. Yeah,
that's right. So my first year of rowing was just at my college. Shout out to first and third. They were absolutely amazing. The coaches, when I was a novice, were just so enthusiastic that I was like, oh my God, rowing is just really fun. So the way that it works at Cambridge is you do a novice term, so Michaelmas term to Christmas, in a novice boat. And then, as you say, in Lents and Mays, the Lent term, and then the summer term, the big race at the end of the season is bumps. So I raced in W1, and my first experience of bumps was spooning off head, which is about as bad as you can do, going from first and getting bumped every single day, including on my birthday, which was pretty harrowing. And then had a much better maze campaign with some of the returners from the boat race.
Oh yeah.
Which was so cool because I was absolutely in awe of the rowers that had just competed. So the first year that I was involved in rowing was 2015, the 2015 boat race season. And that was the first year that the women's boat race had been in the same place on the same day as the men. And so as my college boat club, we all went down and watched the race. We were at Formidable Gardens, so we were seeing them as they were exiting Hammersmith, and obviously Cambridge were down by a length and a half by that point. But I remember watching them and just thinking, wow, they're so good at rowing. They look so fast. That's amazing. I wonder if I could do that one day. And yeah, it was an amazing first year, just rowing for the fun of it, really. I never had any thoughts that it was going to go much further, but I was just having a really good time.
That's the best way to start, isn't it?
Yeah.
I remember, I'm sure I've said it before, but my first year rowing, I refused to get a racing license. I was like, I'm just rowing for fun. I'm not going to take it seriously. I'm just going to do this for fun. I'm never going to take it seriously. And then ended up sort of being my career for a while. So it's weird to look back at that when that kid is like, no, not racing.
Yeah.
Yeah. From the moment I stepped into the boathouse, I just wanted to get out onto the water. But actually, because I'm from Poland, so the first 4 or 5 months of my career was just erging. And everyone was like, oh, wait until you go on the water. It's so much fun. I was like, what are you talking about? This is great already.
Wow. But, I don't know if I would have stuck with it if I'd had to be on the rowing machine for 4 or 5 months before I got to go rowing.
But the water's frozen, so you can't go rowing.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I whenever you find an athlete and a new athlete who loves the erg, you're like, oh, we're gonna have fun with this. If you love the erg, you're gonna love rowing.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, from first seeing the boat race, how did you decide to trial? How did that come about?
So at Cambridge, back in this time, it was still CUWBC, so the clubs hadn't combined yet. But CUW ran a development squad program. So there was an event called Queen's Ergs that happened in Michaelmas term when you were a novice, which was a 500-meter sprint race, which as a novice sounded really fun. Right now, I think that sounds like a horrible idea, but back then it was great. And the university boat club would message those who did good 500-meter times, basically, or those who the captains deemed were really keen novices, to invite them to development squad ergos. So I first stepped foot in Goldie probably a couple months after I'd started rowing. It was probably November of 2014. Oh. And I remember seeing Ashton Brown and Daphne Marchenko, who had both been in the boat race squads and had raced internationally. And I passed them on the way into my little coached ergo, and they set us up in the back of the gym, the light blue floors and the erg records on the wall and the map of the tideway on the other side. And they just did a bit of technical coaching, and you could sign up for them over the course of the year. And that developed later on in the year to a Bucks campaign. So my first time that I represented the university was in the Bucks Beginner 8 for Cambridge in 2015. And we won by 11 seconds, I think.
Oh, awesome.
And that was the kind of first time that I'd represented the university, and we rode with the light blue blades, and it was really fun.
Did you get the other one?
No, we actually rode in we were all from different colleges. So no one had a matching uni suit, because someone was from Jesus, which is red, and I was from First and Third, which is blue and gold, and someone else was from Downing, which is purple. And so what we actually did was we wore black shorts and a white t-shirt, and I wore a white cotton t-shirt to race Bucks.
That's pretty standard for first time. They still in America, they all always they're racing like Zephyrs.
Yeah,
like the shorts,
that's true. I mean, I like a Zephyr, but a Zephyr's pretty different to a cotton t-shirt.
Yeah, I had a cotton t-shirt for my first race, but we also had these hideous, thinnest Lycra shorts. Oh, no. That also had like a white stripe on the side, so it was just so see-through. But it worked. It didn't get caught in the runners.
So what would you say was like the draw for you then? Was it just like the kind of that constant incremental, like I can get a little bit better, or did you, like you said, just enjoying it, or was that a sport you could enjoy? And also at this time you're getting more and more serious, but still trying to do a medical degree.
Yeah, I suppose I wasn't mentioning that. I was still studying and stuff, and desperately trying to pass my first year exams by the time the summer came around. I think the draw for me was I could tell that I was improving, and I could tell I was all right at it. Our novice 8 did very well. Then the Bucks Beginner 8 did very well. And in the Bucks 8, I'd been put at stroke, so I felt a bit important and like I was improving. And so it was really just taking each next incremental step. It was just the what if, really, of like, oh, well, if I do a bit more training, maybe I can do this. And maybe if I did this, then I can do this. And maybe I could trial, and maybe I wouldn't get dropped in the first week.
Yeah.
There's nothing more than that, really.
Yeah,
but
I think it's that kind of, it's a sport that suits it. You can, every time you lift weights, you can do a little bit better at all your erg scores. You can look a little bit better on the water. Like, it kind of lends itself to that like mindset. I think a lot of rowers have the same mindset.
It's also like a good escape, like sitting on an ergo for like a mind that just always races. So, you can just properly like get lost in just looking at the numbers, looking at the screen, and some people find peace in that, including what I did. But I imagine that at Cambridge is actually quite nice, because you got the Blue Boat boathouse. The Cambridge boathouse is on the same stretch of the river as like all the other colleges, so it doesn't actually like seem that far away. Obviously in Oxford, like that's a bit more remote.
But you train quite far away.
Yeah, that's true. I actually hadn't thought of that. My college boathouse is literally 2 boathouses down from the university one. But yeah, the Cambridge team, the university team, trains up in Ely on the Ouse rather than training on the Cam. I think the Cam might be the busiest river in the world. It's genuinely a miracle that any good rowing comes out of it at any point. Most of the time you're spent just being stationary, doing stationary exercises.
Yeah. I wonder how bumps runs. You got like 3 90-degree turns.
Oh yeah, it's absolute madness.
Yeah, it's nightmare for coxers.
Yeah.
Yeah, Oxford's the same. Like the ISIS stretch that they run it on is just absolutely crazy. Like we were lucky enough when I coached at college to be on the river a little bit further up north of Oxford. But yeah, I don't understand how you learn how to row. You take like 4 strokes and you have to stop. Then you have to go around a crew, and then you have to stop, and then you start and stop and start. Oh, it's like mental.
So yeah, do you enjoy Ely as a training venue?
I really do. I love Ely, actually. I think it's absolutely incredible. I think it's one of the massive strengths, actually, that CEBC has, to have such an incredible piece of water to train on. That's not to say it can sometimes be bleak. Bleely, as we often called it while we were trialing. But when it's good, it's amazing. There's CEBC and Isle of Ely, which is the one club on the stretch of river. And then you have a couple of schools that also row on it. But the majority of the time, the smaller clubs don't really go any more than a couple of kilometres away from the boathouse. And once you get through the bridges, which are a couple of kilometres away, you've got a 5-kilometre dead straight bit of river that's wide enough for 3/8 across. And after the straight bit ends, you've got sweeping bends that literally go another 30 kilometers.
Wow.
And there's 2 locks between Ely and the sea. So you can basically row for as long as you want and then spin and row all the way back.
That's brilliant. So you could basically go like the entire river to yourself. We were
Yeah.
speaking with Dave Bell recently, and he said like Ely is a fantastic training venue, but it's not scenic at all.
No, but I mean, does it need to be scenic when you're rowing?
No.
Not there for it.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it is beautiful as well. And
never
maybe
been.
I'm biased at this point. You know, it's in the
memories.
fens. It's flat. There's no hills or anything. You're basically rowing in a glorified ditch. But you know, when it's sunrise and the water's flat and there's some reeds and it can be absolutely gorgeous.
That's an interesting way to put it. It's a glorified ditch. But yeah, no, I imagine I've never been, so one day it'll be nice to go
Yeah,
and
you
see what
definitely
it's
have
like.
to make the trip.
Okay.
So how long were you rowing then before you decided to start trialing for blue boat stuff? You started lightweights, didn't you? With the blue
Yeah. So I rowed for a year with my college. And that was the year that I won the Bucks Beginner 8 for Cambridge as well. And then I did their CEW development squad over that summer.
Yeah.
And then started trialing in my second year.
Wow. Second year rowing.
Scraped through my first year exams. It was fine. Got 2-1. Not a problem. Everyone says that second year medicine is the hardest year. But I thought, it'll be fine. I'll manage. It'll be okay somehow. And miraculously, it was. But yeah, I started trialing as a lightweight. So I trialed for the lightweight race, which was still in Henley at this point. It's now on the Tideway as well. But that year, so 2015-16 season, I ended up racing both the lightweight race and the Blondie Osiris race. So the lightweight and open weight reserve race.
Yeah, Paddy said you did like 4 and 4. Was it
Yeah,
4 race, 4
we had
lightweights?
a crossover,
Yeah.
which was mad.
That's crazy. Yeah. That's a lot of racing. So at this point, thinking about taking it any more seriously than that, or just enjoying being a blue, I guess?
There was a 2K that I did in the MIC term of my second year, so a year and a couple months after I started rowing. It was a massive PB. It was part of the reason that we did the crossover for lightweight and open weight. And that was probably the first time that I thought, I might be good enough for this, but I can't scull.
Yeah.
So that was the problem. At Cambridge, we just learn sweep.
Yeah.
As a novice, we go out in 8s and you learn to sweep. And I'd done a bit of sculling, but you know, it was more kind of gently paddle up and down in front of a boathouse and try not to fall in. But yeah, that 2K was around the same time as the November trials that were going on, that obviously I wasn't going to. But seeing the results come out from those and seeing that I wouldn't have been the slowest with the score that I'd pulled and having a year to think about it to prepare for the next summer, that was when it kind of sparked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like just the speed of which, like my second year row, just like messing about, doing nothing still. Like I wasn't thinking about that seriously, but I guess like it's one of those things like when once rowing gets you, it's like there's no way out once it's hooked you.
Yeah, that's incredible. Right? I spent my second year just wandering around CND finals, just like trying not to come last. Again, trying not to fall in. So, how did you get into sculling then? Was it a conscious decision? Okay, I want to trial. I need to be in a single for this.
Pretty much, yeah. Okay. I knew that I wanted to trial as a lightweight, and I wanted to maybe make the under 23 team, and that's just sculling. So I did my second year race in the lightweights, raced in Blondie, and kind of the way the Cambridge season works is once the boat race is done, which is end of March, early April, you're kind of done, and the rest of the season is just, you know, fun times. So like Bucks is a bit of a laugh, you know, if you want to do Henley Women's, that's a bit of a laugh, all of that. So from that point onwards, there was a lot of freedom to kind of do what we wanted. So I did a campaign for Henley Women's. Me and one of my really good friends, we won the lightweight pair at Henley Women's that year. And kind of after that was done, there was a bit of international racing. I did a China trip, went to USA, but I also was like, I need to learn to scull because I want to go to GB trials. So sort of July, August, September was trying to scull and learn to scull before the trialing season started again, and I'd need to go back to sweep.
Did you figure it out on your own, or did you drag a coach with you to be like, hey, teach me this? I want to be in the best in the world at this thing.
I'm not sure.
Just some mad confidence to be like, so trials is November, it's August. Let's try this sculling thing out.
Yeah. Yeah, well, It was that kind of thing that I think when you're at Cambridge, you're so busy that you don't have much time to worry about stuff. It's just on to the next thing. Okay, got to pass my exams. Okay, that's done. Okay, now it's Henley Women's. Okay, got to do that, race that. Okay, now we're flying to China. Okay, now we're back. Okay, I better learn to scull now. Oh, now it's the start of the season. I need to do a 2K. And it just sort of cycles on. I can't remember. I think there was a bit of like figuring it out by myself. But I know that Rob Baker was like instrumental in kind of getting me onto the GB team and coaching me through under 23. So he had a really key part in setting up some of the foundations that I've been able to take forwards.
I guess the hardest part of like being at Cambridge is getting through the door. Once you've passed, all the entrance exams and the interviews and you're there, then everything kind of seems like a bit less of an issue, right? Like going to trials, learning how to scull is not that big of a deal compared to trying to study medicine in that place, which is really, really impressive.
When we spoke to Paddy, he was saying, like right now we've got quite a lot of medics. And I was like, oh, that must be difficult. And he was like, well, they're not that difficult. I was like, no, I don't mean difficult to work with. I mean, like, it must be difficult working with a medic's schedule. And he was like, oh, well, yeah, I guess. I was like, I'm just going to sit here and be like, oh my God, medics.
Yeah.
There's a surprising number of medics that have done the boat race.
That's just, ridiculous.
I mean, I don't know really why we do it to ourselves. And it's the case internationally as well. There's so many rowing medics. Genuinely, I don't... Like, you'd think that if you have something that's fairly niche like medicine and something that's fairly niche like rowing, if you put them together, and given that I do both, you'd think that I'd be like up there. I don't think I'm the best rowing medic by a long stretch of the imagination. Yeah. There's so many others that are probably way better than me.
That's a whole nother competition. We need to get them all together.
Yeah, it's like a race is like do a 2K and then, I don't know, do like open heart surgery or something.
Open heart surgery?
That's cool, Red Bull. We've got a new event here.
Yeah, maybe start with a CPR.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. But no, it sounds as well like similar to when I came straight to Leander from school and like being part of their development program, like in a similar way, like getting to mix with like incredible athletes, people that you've seen on TV and like names on the walls and stuff. Like it seems like the same in Cambridge. Like it's just kind of feels like quite natural. Lots of other people have done it. It's a path that's been trodden. They're not like out on your own. And I guess, like you said, you've got the support and stuff. Obviously, Cambridge coaches like ready to get anyone into the squad as well. So
yeah, and one of the things that's incredible about Cambridge, and I think is pretty unique to the boat race experience, Cambridge and Oxford, is that cross-pollination between nationalities as well. I'd been rowing for a year and 3 months, and I was rowing in boats with Miriam Gude, who has, been to final Olympic qualification regatta, and I'd been rowing for just over a year, and sometimes I was put at stroke. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'd better not mess up. And that just kind of was the norm. And being able to see how different nationalities kind of do it within their own squad systems, but also how these incredible athletes, these high performance athletes that have been to Worlds, that have been to the Olympics, carry themselves and make decisions around training when I knew literally nothing, having been rowing for well under 2 years. I think was really, really important to kind of upskill me that quickly, because I was always the worst person in the boat. I squeaked in.
It's funny because I've definitely heard other athletes say the same thing, but like about you. Like, there would be like great sessions and like Tom George or Imogen would be at the front and then I would feel like part of it. And it's like you like there's that kind of like process of like going through and then being able to kind of have the same effect on the people below you.
That's cool.
So how would you compare racing for the in a lightweight boat race compared to being in the Blondie crew in terms of standard, but also just as a lightweight?
So it was a weird year. So we had a 4-person crossover between the boats, and the races were a week apart. So it was a very stressful time because we were getting 50% of the time preparing for each race in each crew. And one of the races was about 1,800 meters in Henley, and the other race was the full championship course in London.
Oh, yeah.
And I was so sure we were going to win the lightweight race, and we were leading by half a length in the middle, and then Oxford rode through us and we lost by a canvas. And we then had to cool down on the bike so that we were ready to travel to London to then do another race week in our Blondie crew to prepare for another race against Oxford in a week's time. And not only that, but the Blondie crew that we were coming into, half of us had just lost one of the races that we'd cared most about and had turned up specifically to trial for. And Blondie was not something we'd even thought about at the start of the year. And the other half of the crew, for the whole lightweight race week, had been training in a 4, waiting for us to come. And they hadn't even got to race yet. And they hadn't experienced the loss that we'd just experienced. It was hard. It was really hard. We were all so young and so inexperienced. So I wouldn't say there was necessarily that much difference between the lightweight boat and the reserve boat, because it's 50% the same athletes. But I definitely think we learned a lot from losing the lightweight race. And one of the big things that we brought to the Blondie race was we have to do justice by losing that race. We better not make that same mistake and make sure that we do our best race against another Oxford crew. It's like we've got a second chance. And we did win. We won by 3 lengths, having been down a length at Harrods. So,
so you crossed the line and just
disbelief, genuinely. We crossed the line and I looked at the finish post, and then I looked back at Oxford and I looked back at the finish post, and then I celebrated because I could not believe it, having lost a week before, to come through and win.
That's awesome, yeah.
And then the move to heavyweights, was that something that was that just like a personal challenge, or did one of the coaches, obviously having rowed in Blondie, think that was something you could do?
Yeah, I think it was just I wanted a new challenge. So I'd nearly made the blue boat in my first year of trialling. I'd had a seat race for it and lost by a couple seconds. And so I knew that I was right on that cusp that first year, and that was balancing being in the lightweight boat and the Blondie boat, and then also having the seat racing for the blue boat. So I knew it was something I wanted to do. And I ticked off the lightweight race and ticked off the Blondie race. So it was just kind of the choice that I made, and thankfully I made the boat.
Yeah. Well, it's like you stroked it.
Not that year. No. So I made my first blue boat in the 2017 boat race. Yeah. And then I was also in the blue boat in 2018, and I was at 2 for both of those, because I was the little lightweight in an open weight boat sitting at 2. But the 2022 race, after I came back, later, I stroked last year, which was an honour.
Yeah. Pretty cool. Pretty stacked crew.
Yeah.
Yeah. That must have been fun for sure.
Yeah, it really was.
So so before we get to that, then obviously in the meantime, then GB rowing's kind of getting there. You've got 2 under 23. Did you go both in the single for under 23s or no?
No, my first year I was in a lightweight quad, and we came 5th, and we were beaten by a couple of crews that we'd beaten at the Holland Becker earlier that year, and was definitely a massive disappointment for all of us. But it was my first time doing it, and again, basically just still didn't know how to scull. So the fact that I was there in a quad was kind of miraculous. And then my last year of under 23s, I raced in the single.
Oh yeah. And then I guess, under 23s, like, it's nice. You kind of get those incremental like steps. Like, obviously, did you still at that point still thinking that was something you wanted to go on and do more of?
Yeah.
Like each time you go a little bit higher, like, okay, what's next?
Yes. So after 2017 Worlds, which was the lightweight quad under 23s, and we came 5th, I knew that the next year I wanted to come home with a medal from under 23s. And it was partway through that year, so 2018 season, 17-18, was the first time that Rob said to me, "Hey, Imo, if you want to have a shot at the Olympics, you got to do it now." And that was partway through that year. And that was kind of the first time that I had to seriously think about it, because it involved pausing my degree, moving away from Cambridge for the first time, attempting to make it onto the team, all without having any medals internationally to my name whatsoever, at the time that I was making those arrangements.
And yeah, to give it context, like, this is in a discipline where there's only 2 seats. So for lightweight women's rowing, if you're going to get there's 2 seats, like as a heavyweight man, there's 14 sweep and 7 sculling.
Yeah.
So like 21 seats up for grabs. So like having a go seems like a lot bigger chance than being like, cool, there's like 2 seats available, I've got to get one of them.
Yeah.
It's a pretty risky move. Like you said, like just at the start of your international career, have to move away from Cambridge for the first time, like stepping out into the big world.
Yeah. So I first had that conversation with Rob in April of 2018, which was before I went under 23s, before I went to Senior Worlds and got a bronze. And I had like put everything in place to intermit from my degree, which is not a small thing to do, especially at Cambridge. They really dissuade people from doing it in general. They say, you should finish your degree. But I've got 4 years in and would have 2 years left to complete afterwards. But all that had basically been finalized and put in place before I'd even flown to under 23s that year, without even knowing if there was going to be a spot for me on the GB team at all. But it had to happen in that order. So I had to get the results that meant that I could make it onto the team.
I think sometimes when you have to get something, that's when you do, like if it doesn't matter, then there's not that psychological pressure. But for you, it's like, I need to prove that I can be here, I guess. Yeah. Was it a case of just being like, I don't want to forever think, what if?
Yeah. Definitely. And I could tell that I was still improving quite rapidly. I was still taking chunks off my 2K. I think I got, from something like from 2015 to 2016, I think I got 10 seconds faster, and then another 9 seconds faster, and then another 7 seconds faster by the time I was trialing in the single. And so I knew that was getting better. And I also had just rode in the Blue Bait with Melissa and Holly, Melissa Wilson and Holly Hill, who had both been on the GB team and went on to race at Worlds in the pair in 2017. And they were telling me, Emma, your 5K that you pulled this year is faster than any of the lightweight girls in the squad currently on the GB team. And I was like, is it? Yeah, but it doesn't matter about the 5K. It's 2K racing they care about. And they were like, well, the 2K you just pulled is actually the second fastest on the watching. Okay, well, that's a good confidence boost. And then, I just sort of had to take it step by step. And I really wanted that under 23 win, and then kind of got invited to race the lightweight single at Senior Worlds, actually on the day of the semi-final, but Rob didn't tell me until after I'd won under 23s. Yeah. So I didn't have that weighing over me. But from that point, I knew that it was fairly sure that I was going to be invited to Caversham and get funding and get an APA. But it wasn't confirmed until a good few weeks after Worlds had finished.
Yeah. So what's that like? Like, obviously from starting rowing to within 3 years becoming a world champion, like it must be pretty surreal. Like it's not a feat that a lot of people in any discipline will achieve.
I mean, it was really cool. I think a lot of it's just fun is what I fall back to. Everything that I had done at Cambridge and in rowing, none of it was easy. Especially that last year before I intermitted was my first year of clinical placements. So I was having to drive to Ely in the mornings, do a session, drive to King's Lynn, which was where my hospital placement was, which was an hour and a bit away, do a full day of placement, somehow figure out how to do a second session, and then go to bed and do it all again the next day. And there were times where I did not know how I was going to quite complete it, but I knew that I had to because I wanted to. And so it wasn't really a matter of whether I should, it was I'm going to, so how am I going to do it? And I think that really helped in terms of approaching everything that I was doing. It wasn't, I was like, well, I really want an under 23 medal this year. So, okay, how am I going to do that? Rather than getting nervous about what the outcome might be.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, is there any tips that you have from in terms of doing all that? But you've kind of already said, like, ultimately, if you want to do something, you can find a way. But also, I think, like, every time you do find a way, like, especially when you think it's impossible, that voice in your head says, I don't think we can do it. And then you do. It gives you a lot of strength and you can kind of keep doing it. I remember I've been kind of quite lucky in that with my rowing, I came to Leander and like that was all we did. And I was supposed to go to uni, ended up not going. So I've like focused on rowing, but never had to do it alongside uni, which I've always thought has been pretty insane. But a mutual friend of ours, Anne Buckingham, she's around at Leander. She used to row when she was younger. She's got a family now, super busy. And I went to fix her rowing machine because she was trying to get back into it. And she was telling me, so like getting up at 6, like get all the kids ready, do all this, do all that, get them to school, go to work a whole day at work, come back from work, sort the kids out, do all the washing, do their dinner, cook my husband's dinner, and then 11:30 at night, I'll do an erg. And I was like, wow, okay. Like, if like you can, it's ridiculous, but you can find a way if you want to.
Yeah. I mean, people talk about find your why, right? And I think what I often tell people who ask me how to balance it, I want to do both of these things, but how am I going to do it? I'm really nervous. And I basically just say, if you want it enough, you will find a way. And if you don't want it enough, that's fine. But if you do want it enough, you'll figure it out, and that's something that I think I've carried through. There's been a lot of times where I've been pulled one way or another between rowing and medicine over the years, but I've clung tightly to both because I wanted to do both, and by God, I was going to make it happen.
Yeah. I think I like the kind of expression, again, we'll probably said it before, but most people know what they need to sacrifice to achieve what they want. So it becomes quite a simple equation. Like, well, what do you want to achieve? What would you need to do to achieve that? Well, do it. Just some people, I want to go, I want to do more rowing. Okay, well, you're going to have to go out less. But I like going out. Well, then you don't want to do more rowing.
Exactly.
So kind of just go through the equation and work out what you do want to do and what you don't want to do. It winds me up when I hear people saying like, I wish I could do this. I wish I could do that.
Yeah. So
you can.
Well, you could. If you wanted to enough, you could.
Yeah, I think so.
I imagine you already like had to be world class, like with keeping your schedule around a degree in medicine and trialing and training all this so many times a week. So just making that step. Okay, cool. Like, what do I need to do to make failure impossible? And then just follow that plan.
Yeah, it was all about efficiency. A lot of it, like I think I got a lot better at being mindful when something was useful and something wasn't useful. And so, I went to every single lecture and I took notes in the lecture and I paid attention into the lecture, because if I was going to sit there, I was going to pay attention, and it meant that I didn't need to take notes at any other point. And people will sleep halfway. They'll turn up to a lecture and then they'll like doze through it or go on their phone and stuff. But then they've just wasted an hour, because then you just have to go home and do it all over again. So my kind of approach was trying to optimize all of that sort of thing. So I basically only took notes during lectures. I always got enough sleep because I knew that otherwise I'd be a total disaster. I tried to do as much meal prep as I could. I tried to be as efficient as possible with training, all of those sorts of things. And I think it was every little bit that, I saw I made a decision and it made something easier, and I tried to notice every time that happened.
Yeah, I think like we've heard other athletes as well before talk about like being present, like not wasting sessions, and like just making sure you get the most out of everything. And like as a coach, that's one thing I used to wind me up, was when like you've got an early session, they've got out in the pissing rain, they've run over to the session, we've got the boat down, and then they're doing a session and they're just like going through the motions. Mm-hmm. And you're like, you've done all, like the hardest bit was getting here. Like, why wouldn't you like put it in now? Like, it seemed like very strange, like half level of commitment.
I'd just like to point out that turning up to every single lecture is probably like one of the more impressive things out of like everything that you've done. It's so many. It's so hard.
Oh, thank you. However, it meant that I didn't have to do any work outside of those times. So really, it was the easier option.
Oh yeah, efficiency, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I did the opposite. I in my last 2 years of uni, I turned up about 4 times.
Oh wow.
I was working. I had a job, so. But
I didn't go to uni, so it's fine.
So after you've won under 23s, then you get the message that you're gonna go to Senior Worlds. Are you nervous or excited, or how did you think you were gonna like stack up? Because obviously going from under 23 to senior is a big difference. Yeah.
It was pretty nerve-wracking because it kind of felt like it was the first time that the training wheels came off. So up until that point, pretty much nearly 4 years of rowing at this point, I'd always been at Cambridge. I'd always had the same routine. I'd basically known the same coaches the whole time. Rob had coached me pretty consistently for the preceding 2 or 3 years. He coached me in the single all through that summer. So he came with me to the World Cup that I got to race at. He came with me to race at Henley Women's and Henley Royal, and came with me to under 23s. But when we kind of planned that summer, he'd said to me at the start of that summer, and under 23s is kind of the end, and then I need to take a holiday with my family and young child to prepare for the boat race season, which is his actual day job, all of which is totally fair. But what that meant was once under 23s was over and I got that invite to go to Senior Worlds and part of that to go to the prep camp beforehand out in Varese, he wasn't going to be there. And I was going to be coached by Paul Reedy instead. Reedy's fab. I really loved working with him, but it was the first time changing a coach and learning a new environment and learning a new program and a new squad. And I didn't know anyone, I'd just gone to under 23s in my single. So I'd sort of gotten to know some of the under 23s. And I was very lucky that the under 23 double who won also went to Senior Worlds as the double that year. So I at least had a couple of people that I knew, but other than that, everything was new. And so it was almost like being back to square one when I first stepped into Goldie and trialing and seeing all of these people that had raced internationally only on an even higher level. And I was just like, I better not mess up.
But then again, it's a sink or swim, isn't it? And like you learn the most by spending time with people who are better than you, or the best in, like, you can't find anyone better to hang around with than the best rowers in the world from the British team. So
yeah,
and that must have been good at the same time. Surreal, but good.
Yeah, exactly.
And then do you have any like tips for like dealing with nerves and things like that? It came up something that was better for you, or did you struggle with it a lot, or not really?
For me, I've always found the more prepared I am, the less unhelpfully nervous I am. Nerves are great, right? Because they give you a bit of adrenaline, they heighten the senses. I think I'm a pretty good racer. I think I can give something extra on race day, and I kind of welcome that. But for me, the races I've been most nervous for are the ones I don't feel prepared for. The couple of bumps campaigns that I've done, I would lose all feeling in my body for the first 20 strokes. I wouldn't be able to feel anything, and I just hoped that I was rowing in time and like not crabbing, because I think I was so nervous and hyped up with adrenaline that I basically just couldn't feel anything that was going on. And once you're in a more set crew and have a longer run in and more preparation and thinking about the what ifs and understanding the different race plans, feeling more prepared has always meant that I haven't felt anywhere near as nervous.
That's good advice.
Yeah. So in terms of your first senior event, how did it go? Obviously, I imagine the team has welcomed you as the freshly crowned under 23 champion. Then did you have any expectations of where you wanted to come in that event, or?
Yeah. So I won under 23s in a time of 7:29, which I knew was a fast time for a lightweight single. So I knew that although I was under 23 world champion, and that says something, I knew also the time on the stopwatch was a good one. So that was cool. And the girl that got bronze at under 23s had also raced at Europeans a week, 2 weeks later. And she had gotten either silver or bronze medal.
Okay.
So I knew that things stacked up reasonably well. So I knew there was a good shot of doing well, at least making the A final, if not doing something better. And so it was just a matter of seeing if I could keep my training going, because it was another 6 or 7 weeks, I think, after under 23s. And sometimes I think that can be a bit tricky to manage. Under 23s was my goal for the season, and then I booked a holiday afterwards. So I'd been on that holiday and then come back and started training again, and then gone to Varese for the prep camp. And kind of picking yourself up again, I think, can be a bit tricky. But yeah. I knew it could go really well. And I just hoped that I would be able to do it, basically.
And it did go well? Cool.
Yeah, it was all right. I was always a bit disappointed with how I raced in the final, to be honest. I was quite nervous. And I went off a bit shakily. And then got rowed through in the middle. So I was leading to the K, got rowed through a bit in the third 500. And I wasn't quite able to sprint back to win. I think if I'd done it better, I could have won it. Yeah. But I was also super happy to be on the podium and kind of have my first senior medal. And I think it was the only women's medal for GB that Worlds that year.
That's good.
So that was also quite a cool accolade.
Yeah,
Definitely. I definitely like process driven is certainly like really important. Again, it's something Lola was talking about. It's like making sure that they focus on how they performed as a measure of, because if a crew's faster, it's faster. Like there's not really much else you can do about it. But yeah, nice, interesting to hear you say the same thing. Like, and like it comes up again and again about trying to make sure that process, not outcome driven.
I guess at that point you're like, okay, bring on Tokyo.
Yeah. It was weird because it was all starting to come quite quick. You know, people talk about Olympiads as 4-year projects, and I'd rocked up 2 years before the end of it going, hello, I'm here. Can I come trial? So yeah, it was really exciting, but also feeling a little bit like playing catch up a little, you know, because I'd only just arrived and started rowing and started sculling and had an awful lot to learn in that first season and probably subsequent ones as well.
And then I guess, 2019 was still another good season. Like you final at Europeans, another bronze medal at Senior Worlds. Is that like improve, you know, is that helping you feel like you've got more of a shot, or you just still kind of like head down?
2019 was a mad season.
Yeah.
I'd come in under 23 world champion, and a lot of the winter training happens in singles. And so I was winning all of it because I'd just spent the summer in the single.
Nice.
And I PB'd my 2K, and I was like, hell yeah, here we go. I won April trials. And basically we'd rowed the double a little bit on camps, and there was still, I don't know, 4 or 5 lightweights at this point. So there were 2 doubles going. But I really hadn't rowed that much in a double at all. After April trials, I was put in a double for Europeans. And we came 4th, and that was very exciting. And then Emily Craig, my now doubles partner, had finally come back from surgery. She had a surgery on her wrist, and had missed the February trials and the April trials as well. And so wasn't in the double at that point. And then there was some seat racing done, and she seat raced me out the double.
Oh, no.
Just before World Cup 3, which I was quite upset about. It didn't feel like it was very fair. I'd been rowing at stroke all season, and then had been seat raced at bow. My gear, I think my blades were geared differently. There were lots of things that I could have chalked up to why I'd lost that, and I was definitely searching for reasons. So then I actually had to race the single in World Cup 3. So I was booted out the double in 2019, a couple months before Worlds. And the only reason I got back in the double was because Emily's double partner at the time then had a rib injury. And the only reason that I found out was literally we'd flown out to camp. And I thought I had my single on the trailer. I was going to do the single at Worlds. I decided that I wanted to row the double row a double with our spare to get better at rowing, but I was going to race the single. And then we'd landed, we traveled to where we were doing our training camp, and then we got sat down. And I was then told, and so yeah, you're in the double then, Imogen. And I was like, excuse me, what?
I love this. Such a story of Caversham, isn't it? Like there's no, like, for you just, that's it. Like, this is the change.
Yeah. And then we had 6 weeks to make a double that could qualify for the Olympics. And then we came out with a bronze medal.
That's insane. So were you initially in the stroke seat or in a bow seat?
So I was put into the stroke seat purely because Emily is much more experienced than me, and also a better steers person. So I think the decision was, all right, Emily, you're going to have to try and teach this girl how to row a double. And so if she's at bow, then she can call the shots. And yeah, it was mad.
How was it then? Yeah, that first 6 weeks.
Oh my God.
Was it
I was terrified.
Yeah, because you felt like the difference in level.
Yeah. I think it was really difficult. I'd been quite confident earlier in the year because I was winning everything in the single. And then at the start of the racing season, 4th at Europeans in my first, regatta in the lightweight double with the Olympic class event, that seemed really promising. And then it had been a bit of a knock to my confidence being seat raced out and questioning if I was good enough.
Yeah, but it's not a bad alternative to be put in a single, which is literally like your boat. True.
But I also knew that I wanted to go to the Olympics and there's only 2 seats.
That's true.
But no, I mean, it was an incredibly supportive environment. And me and Emily and Darren Whiter, our coach, we sat down after I'd been told that, surprise, you're in the double. And he said to us, I think we can do it. It's not going to be easy and I'm going to be hard on you, but I think we can do it. And Emily and I both went, yes, let's do this. And I think that was really important because it was that kind of that agreement that this was going to be tough and hard and Darren was going to be tough and hard and we were going to find it tough and hard. But if we went through all the steps, there was a good chance that something really good was going to come out of it. And we improved every race that regatta because I think, you know, the regatta itself constituted a seventh of the time that we'd been rowing together at that point. So we were able to learn.
How many races would you have?
In 2019, there were quarters. So we had heat, quarter, semi, and final to learn. And yeah, somehow managed to snatch a bronze medal.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Obviously, you did something right. Sometimes that short project can be nice, though, isn't it? Because it's short.
Focused.
Yeah, focus. Yeah.
Really,
There's
really
nothing
focused.
to waste. Like I would say, it's like an under 23s campaign. It's like
it genuinely also really did only come good in the last like 2 weeks. You know, we were doing badly on percentages and stuff, I think, and it was stressful because like when Darren wants you to make a change, he wants you to make a change, and you know you're trying, and it's really difficult. And it was on the last speed order that we did. I can't remember at this point, maybe a 6:52 or something, and it was much faster than we'd gone before. And Varaisi's a really warm place, and it was favourable conditions and warm water and stuff. But even so, that was probably the first time that I think anyone thought, okay, they might be able to qualify this. They might do all right. And thankfully, we just kept getting better each race.
I definitely like what you said about sitting down with a coach as well. Like I think I've sort of looked at that before and I spoke to people before about there has to be an agreement. It's not, you can't treat rowing like a normal workplace, you know, because you can't, you know, what you're saying to your coach is I want to try and be the best in the world at something and I need to trust that you're going to tell me what I need to do. And it's probably going to be more than I think I can do if I want to be the best at something. I think sometimes maybe that's like not said, or certainly in the start of projects, I think it's really important to like sit down and be like, what do we actually want to get out of this? Because if you don't want to be the best in the world at something, the last thing you want is a coach screaming and shouting at you because you haven't got something a tiny bit better. So I think that's really important. That's like really good to hear that that's happened.
So before the final speed order, what would you say has like clicked for you and Emily in a double?
I don't know if it was any one thing. I think it was slow incremental changes.
Okay.
That kind of finally showed themselves. We, especially when we first got into the double together, were not rowing together at all. Naturally, we row fairly differently, but we have a fairly similar idea on how the boat should move. And I think that was always the guide, really. And so over that 6 weeks, I think we, you know, we're tweaking, and you know, I would move a bit closer to what she was doing, and then she'd be able to move a bit closer to what I was doing. And I think probably what came together in that speed order is togetherness more than anything, because we both knew that we could move boat well. We just needed to be able to move boat together.
Yeah, that's awesome, because like if you make significant speed changes just through incremental, like slow incremental progress, then you just know exactly I can just trust the system. I really buy into it, and whatever my coach says is like a leap of faith.
Yeah, if you just pull like a mad time out the back, but you don't know why. Oh my God, what did we do?
Yeah.
Quick measure everything.
So it's 2019. You win a bronze medal at the World Championships. You get your Olympic qualification. So you call your mum and say, "Mom, I'm going to go to the Olympics."
It's only qualification.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So qualification.
It works different in different countries.
Does that mean in Poland, would that mean like,
Oh yeah.
you've got, oh yeah, that's set?
Yeah, well, if you qualify as your boat, you go.
Oh, okay.
Wow. Yeah, that's not the way it works in the UK.
Okay.
I mean, there's obviously some precedent set to how you did the previous year, but it's certainly not a given. And obviously, Emily's double partner before I'd come in, who'd been injured, was still potentially trying to go for a seat as well. So it wasn't set. I think my seat was confirmed in December, actually, which is quite early. And then the full combo was confirmed a little bit later than that.
Yeah, so even without an actual confirmation, but like from the moment you step foot into the team to them being like, okay, it's actually on the cards, like this could happen, we're like less than 12 months away. It must be like a pretty, I don't know, liberating feeling, like very rewarding us to like everything that you've committed to rowing in those months leading up to it.
Yeah, really exciting.
I'm not sure I'd let myself believe it even until the last second. I don't know.
Yeah,
I always feel like, no, something's going to happen. I'm going to break my arm or something.
Yeah, like Arsene and Claire was saying, like, even when they had like team photos and stuff, it was like still, you didn't know until
sure.
until you got there.
So you were confirmed before 2020 and everything happened.
Yeah.
So without talking too much about COVID because it's a bit annoying, was that essentially, having spoken to other guys and girls in the team, like for some of them it was a lot of a hindrance, but for others it sort of felt like it was a positive thing, maybe because they needed a little bit more time to get back up to their speed or anything? Like, how did you find it in terms of the project?
I think in general, the pandemic was broadly a positive for Emily and I. We're both pretty headstrong. We're both pretty independent. We both care a lot about our training. And I think we actually really thrived in lockdown. We didn't row together for like 17 weeks or something mad, but I think even during that time we got closer as a crew and got better understanding of each other and the way that we work and the way that we train and stuff. So I was living in London, and there were three professional rowers in a 2-bedroom house. So we had the living room was our gym, and the sofa was pushed up against the wall, and we had a C2 and an RP3 and a weights rack and a turbo.
Wow.
And that's what we did for the summer. And we had no outdoor space at all because we were a first floor flat, and the room that was the gym got the sun during the middle of the day. So when it was really hot, you either got up early and did it first, or you waited until it cooled down after 6 p.m. But yeah, I think Emily trained in her kitchen. I trained in my living room. She PB'd on her 2K in her kitchen in the middle of lockdown with her dog barking at her. It was amazing.
Pushing her on, yeah, go on.
Yeah, exactly. So I think actually by the time we started rowing together again, and near the end of 2020, we were both fitter, stronger, faster, and probably benefited from that extra year.
Probably also water hungry as well.
Oh yeah.
You just want to get out there.
So ready.
We've talked before about it, and something I always try and talk to athletes about is that whatever you think is going to happen, like something's going to go wrong. Something's going to go wrong. So if you're not ready to kind of try and just deal with it when it happens, you kind of want to just sideswipe the kind of like, oh my God, someone hasn't turned up on time. Like, okay, well, get that out of the way. Like, what can we do to fix it? Like, we know something's going to go wrong. So yeah, I think that's like a testament to just everyone who was in that environment at that time. Like, I feel so lucky that I finished with my career by that point. But yeah, like just to take something so big and like flip it and use it, like you said, and like get more land training done and get PBs on the erg. It's kind of like, it's great that I feel like anyone else coming up was certainly for you. Like, I can't feel like there's a problem that's going to be as big as COVID again.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Sorry if I'm like, don't touch wood. But again, like all those things, like it's just confidence. I think like it's how you build confidence. People say, oh, how do you get so confident? How are you so confident in your ability? Like just little wins, like little wins.
Yeah.
So after coming back from COVID, the Olympics were like reinstated for like the following year. So then it was again like a really short, like a much shorter season than what you traditionally have. Was there like still any selection up in the air once you came back, or?
Gosh, it's hard to remember now. There was some, but I think by that point, Emily and I had sort of cemented our seats a bit more. And I think supporting each other through lockdown as well, it felt more like our project rather than a project that we might have a seat in. And so kind of from the end of 2020 until now, it's never really felt, it's felt like our project, basically. And that's obviously a very privileged position to be in. It's not an experience very many people get, but I think it's given us a lot of freedom to improve and make the right decisions.
Yeah, we've spoken to athletes who said that when their seats were constantly being contested, like they found it like hard to be like the best version of themselves. So actually I imagine like having even that degree of comfort in the seat? Like obviously anything can change, but like you can, for example, you can dedicate 2 months of your time to working on a technical change rather than think, okay, I need to like push as hard as I can every single session, otherwise I'm going to get out of the boat.
Yeah, that was the consensus really, is that if your seat is up for grabs, you have to row in a different way. You can't be like taking time, like you said, to work on this little technical thing. You need to be like, I need to be on this like all the time. So I think like it's super beneficial if you can, like the earlier sort of seems to, from everyone we've talked to, like the earlier you can get in set crews. I mean, it seems pretty obvious, doesn't it? Like the better, but not just because the crew, like just more to do with the fact that like giving people security in that seat means that they're able to actually like row to improve, as opposed to just having to like show they're the fastest all the time.
So how did the 2021 season go leading up to the Olympics?
It was Europeans first. Yeah.
Europeans first, then Lucerne, and that was it. We just had 2 regattas to prepare. Man, 2021 was a weird season.
I bet.
It's really strange looking back now, because I think when we were in the middle of it, it was just like, okay, get on with it, do our training, do our prep, wear our masks, fly this thing, fly here, do this isolation, do this race, do this COVID test. And it was kind of head down, taking each day at a time. And I look back now and I'm like, oh my God, that was stressful.
Yeah.
There was such a huge amount of our brains that were being taken up with trying to do the right thing with COVID and trying not to catch COVID and miss the Olympic Games, which was the consequence if we did, pretty much. It was, I think, a bit of a mixed bag. We obviously got silver at Europeans and we're really happy with it, but kind of really wanted the gold, and we were beaten by the Italians, which probably should have been a bit of an omen for the Olympics, really. And then there was only 6 lightweight doubles in Lucerne for our final race. So we had a race for lanes and a final. And we had a terrible race for lanes and came second in it, and were really unhappy with how we'd rode. And then the next day turned it around and won the race by, I don't know, half a length or so. And that was obviously the last regatta that we were going to do before the Tokyo Olympics. So it was really exciting. And then the Olympics rolled around, and that was obviously a whole other thing, and traveling out there and COVID tests and isolation. And when we got there, we weren't allowed in the venue until 4 days before competition or something. So then we had to land train in a hotel, and it was boiling hot and everyone was jet lagged. And then I guess the regatta happened, and don't get me wrong, it was an incredible experience. But looking back now, I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm amazed that we achieved what we did given the pressure that we were all under. Because I wouldn't wish that on anyone in any coming season.
I think that's insane that you were only allowed to like row on the water 4 days before the event started. Like doing a land training camp right before possibly the biggest race of some people's lives is insane. But
it's still crazy though. Like at the time, like it's easy to look back now and be like, we all know what it was, and it was overkill and stuff. But like at the time, like the Japanese people were like dead set against the Olympics, like having anyone come in. They were still very scared of it. Like it's such mad conditions to do it in, but like to get it done was still, I think, pretty impressive.
Yeah, and I will always be grateful for being able to go and being able to race. And it's really sad that it wasn't an open games. It's really sad that there weren't spectators. It's really sad that I didn't get to see any of Tokyo, despite the fact I was there. But it was worth it to be able to be there and race and go to an Olympic Games and race that final. Like that's why we're all there. And it was obviously just very strange, but in some ways it's like the purest form of an Olympics that you're ever going to get, because the only people there were the people who wanted to be there to compete. Yeah,
and you're not there for the crowds or the kit or the TV cameras or any of that anyway. You're there to race.
Exactly.
So you got to do that bit. How was the final in terms of the process?
Oh, what a race,
look back on it now fondly?
Yeah.
Still, or with a sense of like...
Oh, it still hurts.
Yeah.
It still hurts, obviously. But that's
So
sport,
if anyone
right?
doesn't know, for context, it was 0.01 between third and fourth.
Yeah.
And what was the spread between first and fourth?
We were half a second off gold.
Yeah, half a second.
Yeah. And all 6 crews were within 2 seconds. Top 5 were within 1 second. Top 4 were within half a second. Which is pretty much, I think, it must be the closest final that there's ever been.
For the spread of the whole.
And what's more, we were in second with 500 to go. And then got rode through. Obviously it really hurts because winning a medal would have been better than not, right? You ask any athlete, would you rather come third or come fourth? They're going to say, would rather come third.
Yeah.
But, similarly, people say, oh, fourth place is the worst place to be. And I'm like, no, it's not. I would rather come fourth than fifth as well. I'll tell you that much. I'm so proud of that race. I define success as doing what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
And we did everything we said we were going to do. We did our start, we did our transition, we did the middle, we did the push, we did the wind. I just think we just had nothing left. We just had nothing left to give in the last few strokes, and we crossed the line. I fully emptied the tank, and I didn't know where we had come, and I think Emily did know that I knew we hadn't won, but I had no idea second, third, fourth. I hadn't a clue. And it wasn't until I saw it confirmed that I kind of was like, oh, guess that's it then.
But like, how many times have you heard someone say, like, leave it all out there, don't leave it, just leave it all in the water. Like, you'll be happy if you leave it all out there. So yeah. Like, you've got to look at it that way.
And knowing what we went through that year as well, the fact that we got a fourth place, that's amazing. Oh my goodness. I can't believe it. And I'm so proud of it. But it's another one of those things of, I went to under 23s and came fifth and was like, I know what I want next year. It was very much coming away from that, well, came fourth at an Olympics. I know for sure I want at the next one. And I know how to do it.
Before that decision, before that result, did you know you were going to continue?
Yeah, I think I knew. I also knew that I had to go back to Cambridge and finish my medical degree first. So that was a whole other thing. But the one benefit that the pandemic actually brought us was giving us another Olympiad of lightweight rowing. So Tokyo was going to be the last one. But because of the pandemic and because of the disruptions, they decided to keep the racing program the same for Paris. And that meant that the lightweights got another Olympiad. And so in some ways, I have to be grateful for that. And I mean, I feel like this Olympiad has really been just laser focused on that goal and knowing what we need to do to get there.
Does it feel strange knowing it'll be like the last? It's not something you think about really.
I guess I don't really think about it that much. I think it is really sad that lightweight rowing's going. But also in some ways, I'm perversely grateful because it takes that decision away from me as well. I don't have to decide to stop being a lightweight. It doesn't exist anymore, so I can't. And lightweight rowing is very demanding. And it's fine for me. Making weight is fine, but it's not necessarily very fun all of the time, right? You have to make sacrifices at times. And I think actually it's nice to know that that's not on the cards. And I know, well, Tokyo was going to be the last Olympics for Emily as it was. And so I know that that's definitely going to be the last Olympics next year for her now. So it just feels like a bit more of a transition, an end of a chapter, I guess.
So Emily was going to finish after Tokyo, but then you two have looked at each other and were like, okay, 3 years, it's on.
I genuinely thought she was done for a long time, actually. We got back from Tokyo, we raced Henley Royal, we won Henley.
Hang on, you got back from Tokyo.
Yeah.
The week after Tokyo, I was at Caversham fixing stuff.
Yeah.
And I see Emily there.
Yeah, no, she's...
With her single.
Yeah.
Morris, what is that? Is that Emma? Yeah. She says if she takes too much time off, she'll get tight. It's like, what? She was in Tokyo 4 days ago.
Yeah.
I was like blown away by that. I was like, okay.
Yeah. So we raced Henley together, and then we kind of went our separate ways. So my medical degree started, I think, 5 days after I got back from Tokyo.
Wow.
And that was also the same week of Henley Royal. So my first week back was also racing at Henley Royal. And thankfully it was an online lecture week, so I actually could fit it in from Henley. And then once we'd raced that, we pretty much went our separate ways for like 6 months, something like that. Emily was working in an auction house. I was training in Cambridge and then doing a boat race with Cambridge, doing my medical degree. And yeah, we didn't really, I don't think we rode together again for 8 months, 9 months, a long time.
That's a really long time.
Yeah.
Maybe enough to kind of keep it fresh as well, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we were still keeping in touch and saw her at trials and things like that. So I knew what she was doing and she knew what I was doing. But yeah, it's an interesting one for us because we've never really had a very long time in the boat together. You know, the first season we did in 2019, we had 6 weeks. And then we did a bit and then the pandemic happened and then we did a bit and then it was the Olympics, but that was all quite disrupted as well with isolation and things like that. And then for the last 2 years, I've been in Cambridge studying.
Yeah.
So this is like the first year of your whole rowing career where you're just rowing, almost. Well,
yes.
yeah, without COVID as well. So you were just rowing in the run up to the Olympics, but then all that rubbish happened. But so this is like the first time it's just like just rowing, nothing else. That must feel good.
It feels weird.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with myself.
Too much free time.
I saw you started knitting.
Oh, I've taken up so many hobbies, yeah. I started knitting again. I've started crochet. I'm doing watercolor. I'm reading books. On a more serious note, I'm also trying to improve sustainability in rowing. So I've just become an ambassador for the Rivers Trust. And I'm trying to work towards doing some things across rowing and other water sports in the UK. But yeah, it is really weird not having so much of a pull on my time. And yes, it's amazing being able to just like take a breath rather than feeling like I'm sprinting from one thing to another, to another, to another, and then fitting in training. Being able to take the time is amazing.
But even so, the last two, so 2022, you did a boat race, you won Europeans, you won the Worlds. Yeah. Whilst still finishing the 5th year of your medical degree. So that's on placement. How do you do that? You just do like we said.
Good question. How did I do it? Honestly, it honestly feels like I was like in a dream. I've come out the other side of it and I'm still not quite sure how I managed it. It was also extra difficult because Worlds last year was at the end of September, which is super, super late. Yeah. And so in order to do the prep camps and do Worlds, I had to miss 6 weeks of placement from Cambridge. But in order for them to let me do that, I had to make up 6 weeks of placement the rest of the year. So that summer, I was doing my elective placement at the Royal Berkshire in Reading. I was training full-time at Caversham, preparing for Worlds. And then I was also driving back to Cambridge to do A&E shifts at the weekend to fit in my 6 weeks of placement that I was missing so that I could go to Worlds.
Is that one of the ones when I saw when you took the ergo in the car and you were like erging in the car park? Yeah.
Yeah, it was horrible. But I wanted to do it all, and that was the only way to do it.
I'd love to see people's faces. There's a doctor on an ergo out there. What is going on?
Yeah.
My brother has just started dating a girl who's still running here at Leander, and so for Christmas she came to visit us, but she brought her ergo in the car and did a session. But like we were all sort of laughing that like what other family than one that Rose obviously would like she's just out. We're all like having breakfast. No one's even looking. Yeah. She's just outside on the 26th of December, like doing an ergo.
That's definitely me.
Yeah, and it's like no one really cared. Just like,
No, I at Christmas I go on skiing holidays with my family, and actually this past year I was given permission to do a bit of downhill skiing, which was amazing. But I do a day of skiing and then I take the bus down into the valley and go to the gym and do a session in the gym and take the bus back, and then make dinner and eat dinner and then go to bed. And then do a full day of skiing and then do the same thing the next day. One
time we went to my grand's for Christmas. I told my dad we had to take the ergo. I think I must have been 15, already like obsessed with rowing. And he was like, there's no space at all. So I went and found the roof bars and put them on the car and put the ergo on the roof and strapped it because I'd heard that James Cracknell trains on Christmas Day. And he said he does that because none of his enemies do. I was like, oh, I want
Yeah.
that. And I'm definitely training on Christmas Day. I was just like, love that kind of stuff at that age.
Yeah.
So you spent a few months away from Caversham, obviously doing the boat race for Cambridge. How was that season? Like, obviously going from Olympic rowing back to sweep, back to a different like sort of style of training, different sort of level of race. Do you find that your time at Caversham has sort of like helped you physically and mentally for that event? Like, did you approach it in sort of like a different way?
Yeah, it really felt like coming home.
Aw.
It was so nice.
Aw.
We spoke earlier about me learning from all of these amazing athletes. And I wasn't going to do another boat race. I really wasn't. And then after our final in Tokyo, Rob told me, well, you know who's coming to Cambridge next year? Grace Prendergast and Ruby Chu. And I was like, excuse me, what? They're coming to Cambridge? And I was like, oh, no. I'm going to do another boat race, aren't I? I'm going to do another blinking boat race because I want to row with Grace and Ruby. But yeah, I think it was a very different experience and so rewarding to be able to be one of the ones with more experience and give that reassurance and give that motivation to people that I was a few years ago. And, to be able to stroke the boat was also just awesome, and be in stern pair with Grace and, Jasper, our cox, was just great, just an 18-year-old boy with just inordinate amounts of energy, but a fantastic cox at the same time. It was just so much fun. It was so much fun. And when I crossed the line in the boat race, and we'd won, and it had obviously been quite a close race, but amazing rowing and amazing racing, I basically immediately burst into tears because I was like, that's the last time we're going to get to row together like this when it's so good. I'd say the one big difference from when I was at Cambridge before doing sculling and sweep at the same time is I definitely found that before, when I went between sculling and sweep, I'd lose skill. So I'd not scull for a while and then I'd lose skill in sculling and then vice versa. But it felt like I'd gotten my sculling to a level where I wasn't going to lose it when I was going between the two. And actually, it was weird, but going between the fastest boat, the women's 8, and the slowest boat, the lightweight women's single, I actually found it really helpful. Like learning bits of rhythm, learning bits of power curve. It was really cool contrast, and I actually felt like it enhanced my rowing.
Yeah, for the contrast, I think it's difficult to make changes in rowing because it's difficult to make it feel like a change. You can even when you're trying quite hard to make some physical change, it almost doesn't feel it. So I guess that would be really fun to like have all that boat speed and then be like, oh, now it's just me. Yeah. Like now I've really got to feel what I'm doing.
Exactly, but it's still the same thing. You're still taking a catch. There's still a finish rhythm, but it's such a contrast in that boat feel as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I was going to ask a question. So obviously it's like it was blue boat. It's post Olympics. They definitely had some big names like Grace in, just won 2 Olympic gold medals. It's the first one back on the tideway in 2 years because the year before was Ely. This for like on social media and stuff, obviously like your very, very close finish at the Olympics, the kind of buzz around the British team and stuff, like your name starts coming to the front a lot more. Did you feel or notice any of that? I would say fame is relative. It's in the rowing world, obviously, in the rowing sphere, but like, did you notice any of that? Did it bother you?
A little bit. I definitely noticed a difference, I think. Probably the first time racing at Henley Royal, actually, after we got back from Tokyo, because there were spectators on the bank again, and they were shouting our names because they knew who we were. And that was so cool. But I guess the boat race is a bit of a weird one because there is quite a lot of media attention around it in general, compared to a lot of other rowing events. So I'd been exposed to that, in my second, third, fourth years of rowing. And so I guess in some ways it didn't feel hugely different to that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like that big of a deal, to be honest. I'm just a rower.
It's difficult, like from your perspective. That's what I was sort of interested in asking, because like you would hope they wouldn't get in the way, obviously. And I think like you've got, everyone's got like their job to do, and you just sit down, you get it done. But like at the same time, like with things like TikTok and Instagram and all that stuff is all fairly new, and like all of that's like kicking off, and I mean, even us, like I used there's a video of you going off the start, just from like I think it's just a practice start, but it's just so like calm and pressed out on the first three. I used it so much all the time. And like all the girls that we were coaching at Oxford, like, oh yeah, it's Imogen Grant, oh she's stroking the 8, she's stroking the 8. Like it got like, I don't know, I just felt like in a sense like there was like, that was a name. I guess again, because you're lightweight and you're stroking a heavyweight crew, like there's always something that they want to grab hold of. We said this year there's like 2 sets of twins, I think. Or there's a set of sisters, one's at Oxford, one's at Cambridge.
I mean, there's definitely a set of twins.
There was a set of twins as well. Yeah, that's one. That's one that the cameras love.
But yeah, one of our calls in that year where we were coaching was Channel Imogen of the Star. The girls absolutely loved that.
Did they? Who came up with it?
I think the girls came up with it. They just really wanted to like feel special.
That's so nice. Honestly, that's one of the nicest things. Like it doesn't happen very often, but you know, if I'm by the Tideway or sometimes in Henley or Henley Royal, it's when people come up and go, oh, you're Imogen, and hearing about what they're doing for rowing and what they're trying to do, or if they ask for a tidbit of advice, that's always really rewarding.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I like that. It's good to hear that it's like the right amount of like occasionally getting people like in Henley, like having done this podcast thing. Like, quite early on, having done this podcast, we were coming over here to see Jack Beaumont, and we were stopped in traffic, and some guy just started looking at us really funny, and we're like, hi, and he was like, he pulled his headphones out, he's like, I'm listening to you right now, like I'm listening to your Ben Lewis one. We're like, what the hell, we've only done about 20 episodes, like how is it? But then you're like, but it's Henley, so yeah, I don't think anyone's ever going to recognise who we are.
Well, I got recognised in my own gym that I've been going to. So I go to like a pure gym in Oxford, and I literally just go every single day. And then one of the times I'm stretching, I hear someone talk about one of the races on the ice. It's like where the Oxford colleges are. And I mentioned something to them, and they're like, "You're the Rowgear guy, aren't you?" And I was like, "No, surely not."
Wow.
Yeah, it's just that's
You're famous.
Nah, I'm not claiming that. Not claiming that.
Yeah, not yet. Not. Who knows? I think we need to do a few more episodes.
Yeah. So coming back from the boat race, obviously, your degree is very demanding. How do you then approach World Championships prep? And obviously, like coming back from sweep, getting back in the double with Emily, that must have been a bit of a new shift of energy, sort of like feeling fresh, like lighting things on fire. You want to possibly prove to yourselves that you're actually capable of, you know, reaching that top podium at the world stage.
Yeah. So there's been 2 world champs since the Olympics, and I graduated earlier this year. So last year was really tough because Emily did half of the World Cup season, did the World Cup season rather, with a different partner because I couldn't make it. I had exams slap bang literally on the same weekend as the World Cups, and placements and things like that. And I just couldn't swing it. So the first race we did together was Europeans, which was much later in the summer. And honestly, it was the most excruciating thing watching my teammates row and race and win. And I was sitting there revising for exams. It was horrible. But I guess nothing confirms to me more that, you know, choosing to do with this was the right decision, knowing how much I really, really wanted to be there. But getting back in the double with Emily pre-Europeans last year, where it will have been our first race back together for over a year, since Tokyo. And Emily had been unbeaten through the World Cup season with a different partner. It definitely felt like the pressure was on. It felt a bit like, you know, that was my seat race. I needed to prove to Emily and prove to myself that this was the right decision. And thankfully it was. And it was an awesome race. It was so much fun crossing the finish line. We had 6 seconds, I think, until second place. So we actually got to properly enjoy the last 250 because there was just like hearing the crowds because it was the Munich games. So the spectators were really loud and there was lots of people there. And I think once we'd done that and in doing so beaten the gold and silver medalist from Tokyo into second and third, that was the point I was like, all right, let's go, full send, we can do this.
Are they also the same combinations?
Yeah.
Same athletes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of continuity actually. Pretty much, I mean, barring the US at Worlds this year, which is a different combo to previous regattas, basically every single lightweight double has stayed the same from Tokyo until Paris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you find those extra few seconds in speed, like between Tokyo and now? Obviously, if you're racing as the same crews, like you must be doing something drastically different to the other crews out there.
Well, we both PB'd on our 2K, so we've got more power. We're both stronger than we were before. I think we're both rowing better than we were before. And it's just probably another of those incremental changes sorts of things, coupled with the fire in the belly of knowing really what we want.
Yeah. I mean, that's so good, because like the worst thing is when you get in the boat and it's been going well, cool, you want to like get better speed, and then it just starts to become stale and it just runs away from you. So it's like, it's really, really good that like you kind of like have the opposite effect of that.
Yeah. And then you went back this year and repeated at Europeans and at Worlds again.
Yeah.
Feel good? Felt good? Felt strong?
Yeah.
Happy with how things are going?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's really strange because I think often, you know, as our crew debriefs go, at this point we've pretty much rowed in every single type of race. You know, we've had people closing on us, we've had to row through people, we've led off the start, we've been dropped off the start. We've kind of done everything. So things seem quite simple compared to the past. And yeah, I mean, an unbeaten season's pretty great, to be honest, including a world best time. And I mean, you can't really ask for anything more.
Awesome. I mean, that's what you're saying about preparedness. Like once you've gone through every option, once you've raced every type of race, like you must feel the most prepared. Like there's nothing that can sneak up on you.
Emily and I tried to change one part of our race plan at some point this year, and we tried it for a single speed order and we both hated it, and we went back to the exact same one we've had for the last 4 years.
Sometimes there's a reason. You forget why it is the way it is, and then you change them, you're like, no, this is the
Yeah.
I know that. I do that with work now as well. You do something a certain way so long, you think, I wonder why I do it this way. And then you're like, okay, that's why. It takes 10 times longer the other way.
So how are you trying to like keep the preparations and everything like fresh for the upcoming season? Like I imagine you've still got room to improve, even though like looking at some of your race videos from this year, it doesn't seem like there's like that much extra that you can get at the top speed. Like obviously there's pretty much nothing that you can like pick apart when it comes to like both your rowing. Like you're very together, very in time, very strong. How do you approach an Olympic season?
Like any other season, ultimately, we've spoken about this, and ultimately, the goal is the same as last year. You know, it's just the name of the regatta's changed. It's funny, I still look at our videos and see things that we should improve. And you know, especially when Emily and I are training in singles, I'm like, oh goodness, that girl's going really fast. I've got to try and keep up with her. So I think there's a lot of really healthy competition pushing us both on as well. I think I've grown a lot in confidence of knowing what is right for me and what I need to do to go fast over the last couple of years. The first year that I was back at Cambridge, I did the boat race, so I had a bit of coaching there and interaction with a coach. But last year I was at Cambridge, but I chose not to do the boat race because it was my final year and I really didn't have time. And even I could see that this time around. And genuinely had zero coaching from October until April, May sort of time. Bar a little bit on a 2-week camp that I got on with the GB team in sort of January, February time. And so I had to be really sure that I knew what I was doing and that it was the right decision for me. And I think having that level of responsibility, it meant that I stepped up in terms of making sensible decisions and making decisions that I knew were going to make me faster. It was obviously really stressful because pre-April trials, I was like, no one's seen me scull for like 5 months. I could be rowing like an utter moron. I have absolutely no idea. And it was just a kind of like YOLO, like, let's see how this goes. But yeah, I think it's that like independence and confidence in knowing what we're doing is currently working. And we both have a really clear idea of how we want to row the boat as well. And this season is basically just pursuing that ideal with as much determination as we possibly can.
you just get down to it's the same thing. It's just a different degree of like specificness, I guess. Like we talked about, like when you coach, and obviously it's like once they've got the basics right, you're like, now that's rowing. Like now what you're going to try and do is make that really, 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 really good. It's not like another sport where you can learn, you know, in tennis you'll learn a forehand and then you'll learn a backhand and then you'll learn some topspin. Like it's not, there's nothing extra. Mm-mm. There's the rowing stroke, and then it's like how perfect can you nail it. So it's just like different degrees of like it. But yeah, I mean, obviously it must give you confidence going in. Well, obviously having done the last 2 years really good, like the worry is that you might, you know, like become too complacent, although I can't obviously see that happening.
No, not from your attitude.
No, I mean, I hope not. And, you know, I'm really excited to see what this season brings, because I think Emily has made huge steps on this Olympiad physically, going through the training program at Caversham. And I've been in Cambridge, and I think I've made steps on and making good decisions and really savvy decisions so that I didn't run myself into the ground. But this is my first winter full-time at Caversham, this Olympiad. And I'm really excited to see what that's going to bring as well. So it might be, you know, the same combination another year, but actually it feels like every single year we've had is really different. And so there's new kind of benefits to pull from each one.
I'm glad you guys finally get the time to like properly be in a boat together for the whole season.
I feel like, I'm excited.
We're not gonna, I don't know what we're gonna do with ourselves. We're gonna row together and be like, okay, now what? Rather than having like 6 weeks, let's go.
Don't overtrain. That's number one. Yeah. Don't go too hard. You don't need me to tell you any of this one. I'm not giving any advice.
So as a lightweight, obviously rowing is very, very different. You live a very different existence to like an open weight rower. What are some of your tips for other lightweights, or like that you found help you like manage the most out of, you know, just purely surviving on like everything that you can consume, like your maintenance calories? You can't really like, there's not a lot of leeway with like what you can do. That's like a difficult theme for a lot of people. And how do you like even sustain like strength and other things? Like how could you like still be making like muscle gains? Like do you get like a direction from a nutritionist, or do you mostly like take it on an individual case, or how does that work for you?
So I'd actually say the first thing is lightweight rowing is still rowing. There's only one extra thing you got to do on race day, and that's just, you know, stepping on a scale 2 hours before. And everything else is basically the same, right? You're still trying to go as fast as you can from A to B over 2,000 meters. Obviously that's a little bit facetious, because you got to be a lightweight, and, you know, looking at me, I don't look like most of the open weight rowers because I'm a bit shorter and I'm a bit smaller. I think for me, it's always been about making sure that I'm still enjoying everything. I fuel well. I love my food. And, you know, we do so much training. You got to make sure you got enough fuel to do it. Otherwise, you're just spinning your wheels. It's going to be horrible. For me, making weight's never been that big of an issue. And so I've had room to really go for it on gaining muscle, you know, making sure that you're as lean as possible without it being unhealthy for when you're racing in the summers. And then I'm very diligent on making sure I gain weight in the winter so that I've got more fat to insulate me, so I'm warmer and so that I'm less likely to get injured. So I've got a bit more padding when we're sitting on the erg seats for kilometers and kilometers, you know, all of that kind of thing. I think it's really special because lightweight racing is so tight because everyone weighs the same amount. But I definitely think you can be really savvy with it, in terms of really getting every, you know, bit of muscle that you can for when you step on those scales. And, you know, I've always said to people that ask me for advice around it is, you know, if making weight has become more important than winning the race, that's not worth it. You know, ultimately what's going on in my head on race day is the race. It just so happens I have to weigh in a couple hours beforehand, and that's just part of my routine now. If it was too much of a big thing, I wouldn't be able to race well, and I wouldn't be a good athlete as a result.
That makes sense. There's a comfort in knowing that you can push yourself fully, and like there is no like an extra step that that is sort of like a roadblock or a bottleneck into like how you can approach training. So because obviously like you need to be like in a surplus, but like if you don't have that much room to gain weight, like how do you like get more strength? So that was like interesting. Another thing I wanted to ask you was, obviously you spent a lot of time at Cambridge, and the squad has been like training with the Light Blue Clinic, and obviously like innovating in the sphere of like women in sport and how training should be different. Do you think that's helped your development in any way? And if yes, are there any specific examples?
Well, I think one of the benefits of Cambridge is that as a lightweight, I've just trained with open weights as well. And I think that gives you a bit of grit and tenacity, because not only do you have to make sure that you're as good as an open weight, then you have to row better than them and go faster than them. So I think that's also been really, really helpful. In terms of the training at Cambridge, it's really cool because it's such a long race, but it's also pretty emphasized on like weights based and robustness based things. So I think most of the time the girls are lifting like 3 times a week, plus doing all of the ergs and on water sessions, and that robustness is really, really important. I'd say as a generalization, women tend to pick up rowing a bit later, tend to have done less sport beforehand, tend to be less robust beforehand. And so building those supports is really important. I mean, for me, Cambridge was just like the perfect environment to learn all of these things, and good weights coaching was absolutely one of them. And, you know, I really love weights. I find it really fun, really enjoyable part of my training. And it's part of what makes me feel really strong and part of what gives me confidence on race day.
Cool. I've got a question. So
go for it.
Given that obviously you've been successful in open weight stuff with Cambridge, certainly in like a pretty stacked crew. We talked about your world best time. I think you said is maybe the 4th fastest time ever.
Don't quote me on that, but maybe.
It's high. It's high. Even though you were lightweight, you're putting down times which are very, very close to heavyweight crews. And the fact that obviously lightweight rowing's going, is there a little voice in your head that's saying, do you want to have a go at swapping over to heavy?
Maybe. Yeah.
That's a bit too far away to think about.
It's very much all focusing on the Olympic campaign at the moment. But the closer Paris gets, the more sure I am that I'm not done with rowing yet. And because lightweight rowing won't exist, it's going to be, I mean, it's exciting, but it's going to be a matter of figuring out where I might be able to fit in terms of an open weight rower or a beach sprints rower. I don't think anyone really knows that much about it. You know, I think the shape of rowers has changed over the years. You know, the rates are climbing in almost every single boat class. And, you know, it's no longer the 7-foot tall behemoths that are winning races. It's people who are a bit smaller and a bit more dexterous and zippy. And, you know, I'm 5'6". I'm not very tall at all. So, you know, there's definitely a question as whether, you know, how short is too short. But ultimately, you know, if you move boat, then you get given chances. And the idea of giving it a go excites me. And I like following things that excite me.
I would say, like, I was, again, for the same reasons, sad to see lightweight rowing go, because it's just so exciting. But initially, like a thought in my head was like, but hang on, like there are a lot of incredible athletes who are probably maintaining their weight down a little bit, who like I'm hoping would like have a go at heavyweight rowing. Because like when I was a heavyweight rower, I'm damn glad there were some lightweights who stayed lightweight. You know, like I was like, I don't want to race that guy. Like I was never much of a single sculler myself anyway. But like, you know, there's some. We spoke with Ben Welburn. Who was like a smaller, he's a coach now, but he's kind of smaller when he rowed. And the thing that you have to do as a smaller athlete is work out how to move a boat. And then the big guys, like I was pretty big at school, I was a bit more skinny, but still, you know, I always had that ability to just lean on it. I've got big stroke length. I've got advantages in like rate cap stuff. So I think like hopefully maybe if there's something like exciting that can come out of it, it would be to see some lightweights. Because also essentially if you're, like you said, you don't struggle to make weight, but like if you're limiting your weight, by definition, are you limiting like your maximum performance?
Oh, quite possibly. I I mean, it's a fun thought experiment at the moment. But I know that the way that I would put it is, if I retired immediately, I would gain weight. You know, I wouldn't lose weight. And I think lightweights sometimes would lose weight when they stop, and some lightweights gain weight. And I'm one of the ones that would gain weight. You know, I'm pretty lean as a lightweight. And yeah, the idea of seeing what I would be able to do with an extra like 5 or 6 kilos of muscle on me is quite fun.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was going to say, because obviously, like right from the start, when you picked up an oar to then becoming a world champion in the span of 3 and a bit years, obviously that guy who in your taster session said that, like, you seem to be like quite good at this. Like, I just like really wonder, like, where's all that power, strength and grit and all that coming from? Like, what fuels you? What makes you so fast?
I have a joke answer, and then I'll give you my real answer. So the joke answer
I'll take
is
that.
spite.
You for yourself, despite yourself.
Gosh, I don't know. I did quite a lot of sport growing up, but I never took any of it seriously. So I know that I had a bit of a base in terms of like coordination and proprioception and a bit of fitness. And I am very stubborn as well. I think rowing suits me because it's got that physical aspect of doing a lot of training. You know, I know some people from other sports. I'm good friends with a couple of the sprint cyclists. And, you know, I was telling them about the amount of training I do, and they were looking at me in horror. I was like, yeah, no, I'll go on a 100k ride or something. And they were like, well, we're cyclists, and the furthest I've ever ridden is 100k. And I was like, oh, well, I went on holiday and I did the North Coast 500, and it was 500 miles in 5 days. And they were like, what? And I was like, yeah, no, it was fine. It was really fun, actually. So I love that side of it. And I also love the technical side, chasing those feelings and the movements and trying to perfect that rowing stroke. Rowing is one of the only times where I'm not thinking of other stuff, because my head's so full of the rowing that there's no space for anything else. And as someone whose head is very full most of the time, that's something that I really cherish. And that kind of mindfulness and calmness that you can feel when it's flat water and the sun's rising and it's slightly crisp, so you're not too hot but not too cold, and you can just get your blades off the water in the single, and the only noise is the blades coming in and out of the water at the catch and the finish. That's, I think, what keeps me coming back.
It's quite mesmerizing, isn't it? Like at times, I think back to like some of the training camps I had as a junior, and like we'd be out in Poland, and there's like a lake next to a castle. I think they ran under 23s like a couple of years ago. It's quite scenic. It stretches out 50k. But yeah, like rowing in the sunset, in a double, in time, effortless. I love that. I could get behind that.
It's quite elusive, isn't it? I think that's the draw, isn't it? You can't always get it. You can't just go out on the water and find it. Like, it takes time and effort, and you have to work hard towards it. Just like finding the limit as well. I have a spreadsheet with every single session that I've done since Tokyo.
I saw that. That's absolutely insane.
Which has been a bit of a personal project that stemmed from trying to key the coaches into what I was doing, so that they knew that I wasn't just, not training while I was away at Cambridge, because I had basically no oversight. But it's mad to, watch those lines of the amount of training I'm doing and just see them going up. And then the next season they go up again. And then the next season they go up again. And I'm like, well, I guess I haven't found the limit yet, and that kind of thing is like, that's what gets me really excited. And that's what keeps me going.
Awesome. Yeah, like I'm hoping like after Paris we're gonna like see more of you in rowing as well. I think, just keep finding that limit, and I think that'll be great. I guess we've just got some quick fire round questions to ask you. So the one that I usually start with, but I'm gonna change it this time. Actually, I want to ask, because you've been a sweep rower, you've rowed with open weights, light weights, etc. You've done sculling, obviously. What is your favorite bow type?
Damn. A good coxless 4 is magnificent.
Oh, interesting.
I love the double. There's something so special about a double that goes well, because it's you and another person understanding each other perfectly. And I love the single as well. I really like time in the single. maybe because I've had some good results from it and had enough time to get there. But those would be my top 3 probably. But honestly, I think out of all of the boats, the only one that I've not really feel like I understand, I don't think I understand quads, but the rest of them I feel like I get.
Interesting. Yeah. It's quite different, like going from a double to a quad. Like I was always quite good in doubles, and then the coaches here at Leander would put me in a seat race in a quad, and like, no, people have absolutely dicked on that. I put 3 seconds on me.
I feel like this is one thing where I've realised that there's levels above where I got to when people start talking about how you like approach like a double. I mean, it's never a sculler, but like a double and a quad differently. And I was like, I'm just hanging on in any boat class.
Well, in a single and a double, like most of your body is like actually above or like sticks out from like above the side, right? So like in a quad, mostly you're buried, and it's just like from hip upwards.
I'm buried. I'm buried. I'm hanging on.
Yeah.
Go on. What's it? You've got another question.
So yeah, I've got a few more actually.
Go on then.
Yeah. Out of all the rowing venues that you've trained at, visited, or raced at, what are some of your favorites and why?
Tideway Championship course, because it's a beast and you never quite know what you're going to get. And it's all about being adaptable and reacting to it and just doing your best. Obviously, I have fond memories from the boat races on that course. Bled was absolutely gorgeous this year, but I did not enjoy rowing on that lake.
Okay.
Beautiful to watch, great for spectators, horrible for rowing. Here's a hot take, and probably one that you won't get from anyone else. I have a really soft spot for Rotterdam. It reminds me of Ely, and I actually really enjoyed racing there. I raced there in 2019 in my single after I'd been seat raced out the double. And I won in a time of 8:42 or 43.
Headwind.
It kicks up there. It's either super fast or super slow. Yeah.
But no, I don't know. There was something about the venue that reminded me of Ely, and I just quite liked it.
Yeah, it felt a bit homey. Yeah. This is the first time someone said Rotterdam. So
yeah, that's what I thought.
We've had Bled quite a lot, obviously, and then I love that quite a lot of people will say like their first home little like tin pot regatta thing, which I like if they rode as a juniors and stuff, which I thought was quite nice. Like take it back to it. I've got a question. If you could travel back in time to meet you, the age you were when you really first caught the bug for rowing, and you thought this is something I really want to do, what advice would you give your younger self?
There's no need to get quite so frustrated after a bad session. I was a bloody nightmare. I would get so frustrated and so angry when something wasn't going quite right, and I'd just get more and more and more tense. And I remember one of my friend's faces when I said for the first time, well, you know, sometimes you just have bad outings. And she turned to me and was like, what? You said that, Imogen, you? And I was like, I guess I've mellowed in my old age. It doesn't have to be the be all and end all every single session. I think that's what I'd say.
Yeah, it's hard not to let that get into you when you're like trying to like make everything perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got a question. If you were to go back in time and to repeat an event when you're 60 or 70 and do that race again, what would it be and why? Without it being the obvious answer.
Boat race.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the boat race. I don't think I'll ever, more specifically actually, probably the Blondie Osiris race. It was the first Cambridge women's win on the Tideway. And since that race, the Cambridge women have been unbeaten. I don't think I'll ever experience the joy that I felt crossing that finish line, because we were so inexperienced, and we were down in the middle of the race, and we'd lost the week before, and all of those things. I don't think you'll ever recapture that joy of that first big win.
I think it might be a big win next year.
I don't know.
Fingers crossed.
Not saying anything. And that's a good one.
That's absolutely awesome. Like, yeah, you're right. The very first joy is something that you compare all your other wins to, isn't it? And later on in your career. So I guess I've just got one last question that I usually ask, and that is, who are some of your rowing idols or people that inspired you or continue to inspire you during your career?
My doubles partner, Emily. absolutely formidable athlete. It's an honor to row with her. And I said it in an interview recently, but I absolutely stand by actually reflecting on it. I feel like we're more sisters than anything else at this point.
That's
you know, we don't always see eye to eye, but you know, I know that she's going to have my back when I need it most, and I've got hers. Rowing with Grace was an absolute privilege. I got to row pair with her a little bit before Kerry came to the UK, and it was awesome. And seeing her win gold and silver, doubling up in Tokyo, was very impressive. When I first learnt to row, my idol was Helen Glover, because she had to stand on her tiptoes to get into world class start. And as a short person myself, I very much identified with that. And I think other than that, the person that's probably had the biggest impact on me was maybe my fiance. He was my novice coach.
No way.
He coached my novice boat in my first year of rowing, and we're getting married next November. And I can't think of a better person to watch a rowing video with, send results, chat about whatever developments happened in rowing. And you know, I can't keep him away from the races that I do, who's at almost every single one.
And understand the insanity of it all.
Yeah.
And like allow it.
Because he gets it.
Yeah,
and he was there from the beginning.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's really good.
That's so wholesome. Yeah, exactly. Then I guess like your answer just spurred another last question, which is like, what is it like being in a team with Helen Glover now?
It's pretty cool. I mean, she's got so much experience. I actually think the thing that she brings now is she's a mum. And rowing is one of the biggest things in her life, but it can't be the only biggest thing in her life. And I think speaking to some of the other girls on the team, there is this worry about how does it work with motherhood and professional sport in general. And there's been lots of conversations in athletics and football and rugby. It's, you know, being discussed a lot more. And she's one of the trailblazers with it, you know, trying to make it work with 3 kids and childcare and fitting things in. And her and Matilda Hodgkins Byrne, you know, they're some of the first. And you know, Helen is the only one that's been to an Olympic Games as a mum. And yeah, I'm really grateful for them kind of leading the way on that. And it's an exciting thing to think how that might progress in the future.
Yeah. That's obviously is so demanding, that role of motherhood. Like, we're gonna actually get some mums on the show to talk about it. We've spoken to Beth and Thomas, who now coaches at KGS rowing, and yeah, just to be. She said that after having 2 kids, she just wanted to like inspire other women to come out and coach and do the same. Like, because just because you've had children and started a family, that doesn't mean like your career has to be over or to do some other things. And then soon we're also going to speak to a woman who's rowed across the Atlantic in a crew called the Mothership when there was 4 mums.
Wow.
And she was blogging about it, like from the deep ocean. So that's quite cool. And obviously at some point we'd love to get Helen on to speak about that as well too. Maybe, we never know who we're going to inspire, hopefully.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, Imogen. Like, I wish you all the best for training. Like, your attitude is so humbling to see. Like, it's fantastic. Like, the approach that you take, your mindset, and like just a work ethic for your training and commitment, and juggling medical degrees and going to the Olympics and everything. I think there's so much to like be learned from listening to you and just like seeing that it can be done. So thanks so much for coming on. At some point I'd obviously love to have you on again. But yeah.
Thanks so much for having me. It was fun. I mean, there's nothing I enjoy more than chatting about rowing for a few hours. So thanks for indulging me.
When we started the podcast, so like, well, what do rowers love more than rowing? Like, we're talking about rowing, so I think this is going to work. Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible what you've done in 9 years, and you're probably bored of hearing it, but like certainly inspirational. Like, anyone who thinks that uni's going to get in the way or anything else is not possible, I think you kind of proved to all of them that if you want it enough, like we said, like you can make it work. And yeah, best of luck obviously this year. Hope it goes amazingly. We're going to be keeping an eye on things, but yeah, no, I don't think you need any luck anyway. So yeah, no, I really appreciate you speaking to us, and I think there's a lot of what you said that's going to be inspiring and useful for other people to listen to.
Thanks.
Cool.
Awesome. I think that concludes everything for today's episode. So on that note, easy there.
Cue the music.